Welcome back. Should background checks and drug testing be part of the pre-screening that you do before hiring a new employee? Richard Seldon is president of Sterling Testing Systems. His company performs employee pre-screening. He joins me now. Welcome.
Thank you, Wayne.
Now, you deal with a lot of businesses, large and small, and you know, for years, certainly for years before we had 9/11, it was mostly large corporations that were dealing with this kind of screening of employees. Small businesses really didn't think about it. You say small businesses should be thinking about this type of screening now.
Sure. Background checking for both small and large businesses is growing at a tremendous rate. At one time, small businesses would have the philosophy that we get a lot of recommendations. We know a lot of the people who are tendering an application for employment. But as business climate has changed, they have found that they have to be as careful as a large corporation in conducting a proper background check.
Now, what's the first thing people should be asking for? There are, of course, obvious things, but what are we looking for at first, before we really get into the nitty-gritty of the background?
Well, I think some of the things that any company is looking for, again, both large and small, is making sure that people are properly representing who they are and what their capabilities are. I think, as most of us know, identity theft is the highest rising crime in our country right now. So a lot of organizations are looking to work with a Social Security number and run a Social Security verification and an address verification to try to take steps to ensure that if someone walks into their office and says they're Richard Seldon from Sterling Testing Systems, that they truly are that individual.
Now, they should be asking for a Social Security number right off? Because originally when Social Security numbers were developed, they weren't developed for this type of activity.
Well, there's a number of things that happen. I mean, first and foremost, you have your basics. You have all organizations, again, of each and every size, going through the basic three components, which are an employment application, a resume, and an interview. But candidly, the days of just using those three components to make a hiring decision are really a thing of the past. Today, besides the Social Security trace and address verification, corporations, large and small, are digging down to the nitty-gritty of doing criminal background checks and checking someone's driving record, and for certain positions, checking their credit history and so forth.
Criminal background is understandable. Certainly, people don't want people. I mean, within the guidelines of the law. Why would a driving record necessarily be important to somebody who may not be driving as part of the work that they're doing for that position?
Okay, that's a good question. It's actually a pretty common question. Even if you're not hiring the individual who's going to be using a company subsidized automobile, it is an insight into one's character. As an example, if you were looking to hire an individual and found out that they have 8 speeding tickets in the last 18 months, or that they've had their driver's license revoked or suspended, or DWI or DUI, which oftentimes does not come up on the criminal background check, it's a tool to give you insight into an individual's character.
But there are people who think that that's an unnecessary broach into the information that perhaps an employer should not have, that this is information that they should be staying away from and they should be dealing with the person individually.
Well, that's really why the Fair Credit Reporting Act is in existence. There is protection that is in place that protects the applicant and the process. No background check can be conducted on an individual without them first reading and signing what's referred to as a consent and disclosure form.
So right away they are aware, as individuals applying for the position, that this information could be looked for and searched for.
Absolutely. Certainly before the company requests our services, the individual must sign off on an FCRA compliant consent and disclosure
So right
form.
away that's important also for people who are looking for jobs out there to understand and read the forms that they're being asked to sign.
Certainly, and I think in this day and age that they should expect a background check to be taking place.
In the time that we have left, the importance of this, and something we really haven't touched on, is companies are getting sued left and right for the actions of the individuals that they employ. And that's why that you really need to know who you're employing.
Right. The propensity for negligent hiring lawsuits in our country has grown tremendously. And unfortunately, when corporations face this type of allegation, if the lawsuit progresses and they have to face a judge or a jury, what that judge and jury will determine is whether or not the corporation did what was fair and reasonable. Were they prudent? What are others in their industry doing? Or did they try to save a few dollars and circumvent what would be customary within their industry to protect both the fellow employee and the customer.
Their due diligence.
Absolutely.
A jury will look to see if the company's done their due diligence in deciding, say, okay, you employed this person who was a listed sexual predator to work at a daycare center, that type of thing.
Absolutely.
And this, are we seeing this more and more? And people searching for sexual predator history as well
certainly.
these days?
Sexual offender database searching is growing as rapidly as any other tool that is used. We work a lot with academia. We work a lot with corporations where people are going into the home, healthcare, child care, daycare, and you just open any newspaper and unfortunately you read these horror stories about incidences that oftentimes could have been prevented if a thorough background check was conducted.
Richard Seldon, thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Richard Seldon is president of Sterling Testing Systems. We have plenty still ahead here on Bloomberg Small Business. Stay with us. We're back right after this.